Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, colleagues and curious travelers, today we turn our attention to Avelo Airlines, a relatively young, ultra-low-cost carrier that has been making waves in the U.S. aviation market, especially at smaller airports and secondary hubs. Within the shifting landscape of airline operations, regulatory intervention and travel demand dynamics, Avelo's story offers lessons in adaptability, niche strategy and the interplay between federal mandates and regional service. Avelo Airlines entered the aviation scene with a clear value proposition: provide affordable, point-to-point service from underserved or less crowded airports, sidestepping some of the congestion and cost burdens that legacy carriers carry. Over the years, the airline expanded its network, launching services at places like Tweed New Haven Airport in Connecticut and Lakeland Linder International Airport in Florida. Wikipedia. Now comes a significant external shock. The Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, has mandated flight cut orders for airlines operating at 40 of the busiest U.S. airports, as much as a 10% reduction in capacity, starting this week, in response to staffing shortages among air traffic controllers and other safety and operational concerns. CBS News. This regulatory action raises immediate questions for airlines. Which hubs will be impacted? How will route networks adjust? What does it mean for travel reliability and cost structures? In Florida, the cut list includes major hubs like Tampa International Airport, TPA, Miami International Airport, MIA, and Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport, FLL. Yahoo! But at Lakeland Linder, the situation is different. None of Avelo's flights at that airport are directly impacted by this particular round of FAA cuts, according to airport officials. The Ledger. This distinction offers Avelo a strategic cushion, operating in a region avoiding the immediate regulatory burden applied to major hubs. In parallel, Avelo has publicly stated it will stick with its winter schedule despite the federal order to cut flights, signaling both confidence and strategic prioritization. That means the airline is choosing not to scale back its offerings at the airports it serves, at least for now, focusing on maintaining capacity rather than retrenching. While the full details of every route and airport weren't entirely disclosed in the sources available, this stance is clearly communicated. What does all this mean in practical terms? For travelers, it means that flying with Avelo out of places like Lakeland may offer more stability than major hub alternatives currently facing cutbacks. For the airline, it underscores the value of a network anchored in less congested airports that may evade the brunt of regulatory capacity constraints. At the same time, it reflects the risk inherent in being exposed to systemic pressures, such as air traffic control staffing crises, a government shutdown or regulatory tightening that can ripple across the industry. There are several key takeaways from Avelo's situation worth reflecting on. First, operational agility. Avelo's model, serving smaller airports, less competitive routes, lean cost structures, gives it flexibility. When large hubs are constrained, a smaller player can capitalize on capacity vacuums. Second, strategic market positioning. By emphasizing airports like Lakeland that are not among the 40 major hubs targeted by the FAA's cuts, Avelo insulates some of its operations from immediate regulatory drag. It suggests that growth in the aviation industry may increasingly gravitate towards secondary airports, where capacity constraints are lower and competition less intense. Third, regulatory risk. The FAA's move demonstrates that even airlines that are seemingly insulated from competition or congestion must nevertheless reckon with federal mandates, whether from staffing shortages, safety concerns, or broader systemic issues. Avelo's decision to maintain its winter schedule despite the cuts implies a calculated bet that it can sustain operations without compromising safety, capacity, or service reliability. Fourth, customer experience implications. For consumers weighing airline options, the messaging from Avelo, that its flights at certain airports are unaffected and that its schedule remains intact, may offer reassurance. At the same time, travelers must remain vigilant. Even if a particular airline or airport isn't directly listed for cuts, ripple effects, crew rostering, scheduling knock-on effects, connecting flights, can still materialize. And lastly, broader industry signal. A piece of this story is about how airlines will respond in a year of heightened regulatory sensitivity, operational disruption, and changing traveler expectations. A niche, low-cost carrier like Avelo might not dominate global headlines like major carriers do, but its approach could be emblematic of wider trends: decentralization of flight networks, increased reliance on underserved airports, and operational models that are less exposed to high-cost congestion and regulatory cap burden. To conclude, The case of Avelo Airlines amid the FAA's flight cut orders presents a compelling study of how a nimble airline can both leverage favorable market positioning and simultaneously face external headwinds. For passengers, it could mean more dependable service at less busy airports. For the airline, it's an opportunity to validate its model in times of systemic disruption. And for the industry, it's a reminder that regulatory constraints and capacity management are not just issues for the major carriers, they affect the entire ecosystem. Thank you for listening.